Hello everybody, what's going on? My name is Sir Medieval and welcome back. Today we're going to be bringing back something that hasn't been done in quite a while. I think the last time I did this was during Pantheon, when all that news was dropping and all the streams were going on, stuff like that. But I wanted to do this for a while and I couldn't think of a better time than right now when Chronicles of Elyria has finally released their domain settlement selection map. I've been looking that thing up, down, left, and right. I've been theory crafting my butt off, but I love the look of it so far. We got a lot of cool information. What's going on, everybody? Hey, Silent. Hey, Elijah. What's up, Reese? Oh, God. He's teasing us. What's up, Whisper? How you doing? Glad to see you. Hi, Wild Relic Productions and Dragon. How are you? Oh, freaking Venom and Jared were there, too. I didn't have a lot planned for today because there's so much information for Chronicles of Elyria. I kind of had a baseline of where I wanted to go with it, but honestly, it's just there's so much to go through in general. Let me turn that down a little bit. That there's no real like one place you can kind of start off. But just to start with, I can kind of show you a little bit of what the actual domain and settlement selection map looks like. Just in a second here, you might be able to see my actual monitor now. I should monitor this so I can tell if it's actually visible or not. Hold on one second. Let me make sure. Okay, cool. You can see it. Great. So this is basically the Chronicles of Elyria website, and this is the actual post that they have for the map. They actually made this, I don't know how long it took, but it seems like there's so much detail that went into this. It's absolutely crazy. The server that I'm a part of is called Angelica. So this is the regions that are a part of that specific map. And the way that it's divided up into, as you saw beforehand, let me see if I can, oh yeah, there we go. So each different map is basically for each different region. So there's NA West for Angelica, NA East is Luna, EU is Selene, that's everybody in EU, and Oceanus is going to be the Oceanus server. Each map actually has a different foundation of how it looks. So each one will have a different shape, size, things of that nature, have different counts, and have different dukes, have different everything really. Just all of the map itself is completely different all around. So even the Oceanus, I think that's like one of the most notorious for being different. The design and just the layout entirely of Oceanus looks completely different compared to the other maps. But we're going to be looking at Angelica because that's the one that we're part of, and we're actually part of the Ashland Kingdom, as a matter of fact. And I am actually going to be planning on going into a lot of crafting. Whenever it comes to sandboxes, if they can do a crafting system well, I tend to enjoy it a lot. But the problem with most games is they actually have like a bare bones crafting system. But I found out a couple of years ago that I really do enjoy crafting, like for no reason. But I don't know how I discovered it. I think it was Immortal Online because I spent like 1,000 hours just doing nothing but crafting. That probably had something to do with it. But overall, I'm looking forward to it in this game. I'm really excited about learning more about the process because they're actually changing it now. It used to be where crafting, and I can show you the dev blog of this, but it used to be where we'd do it through mini games and we'd be able to get resources through that way, but they kind of scrapped that. So now I'm not sure if we know exactly what the process is going to be like, but I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about that today. I'm actually a part of the Duchy of Starmore, and my duchy, or Dutch Duke, yeah, there we go. His name is Negnar, and I'm actually going to be inside of his duchy. I don't know exactly where I'm going just yet, but I've taken a look at this up, down, left, and right. We're actually a part of the Harathi faction in this entire region. It's amazing. I love it. It's Harathi, Broodveer. There's some Neuron in here as well, but it's mainly Harathi and Broodveer. My two favorites in Chronicles. Harathi are basically like the beardless dwarves, and they do that for religious reasons, I believe. And the Broodveer are like these awesome, towering, animalistic creatures or animalistic race. I think they're pretty much close to giants, but honestly, I don't know really what to describe them as. But anyway, past that, I wanted to go back from the very beginning and kind of show what Chronicles of Elyria kind of started as and how it is now. It's a lot different from how it used to be. Like, for instance, if we go back and meet the team, for instance, we'll queue that one up really quick. But just like graphic-wise, how much it's changed. This is their high-fidelity client that they wanted to like originally start the game with. This right here, like if we go into this one, which you see somebody running along the rooftops kind of thing. This is the kind of stuff they wanted to start with. I remember like reading about what they wanted to do with the game and the combat system and how they wanted to have parkour. Like this was one of the first times I saw the combat system entirely. Was this combat video right here. The flinching I kind of got nervous about. A lot of people I think thought it would be a little silly. But you said your goal is to bring Jaona to the north. My goal is to breed Broodveer and Frothy as soon as possible. We got to make that happen. More updated info on everything, actually. Yeah, I know. I need to find out more about that. I really do. This is the part I was super excited about. That right there was sweet. The Princess Bride clip. Exactly. That was one of my favorites, actually. Especially the way... Look at his finesse. I mean, the way he stuck that landing was so insane. But overall, this is one of the first things that we ever saw for the game over 3 years ago. And it's still really insane to look at even now. The combat does remind me a little bit of this, like what we saw from the recent client. It does look very similar to this from what I was seeing, but I think there's key differences. Like in the test client, of course, there's like these particle effects around the actual strike. So that's probably for their testing phase. They actually switched from wanting to go with anything like this to their Unreal 4 client. So it's completely different now in that regard. But the way it looks like, let's see if I can show you this. The Tour of Titan Step is a good one. This is how graphically it started out as, or how they wanted to go with it. And their plan for this game is that during alpha, during their testing phases and things of that nature, you can see it's kind of laggy. They want to use the pre-Illyria client, the Unreal 4 client, to test. Oh snap, it's Negnar. That's right, absolutely. I might miss a couple things. Looking for Broodveer blood to my near end. Oh yeah, we got to make that happen too. We got to make that happen, absolutely. You know what? If you're down, I don't know where you're going to be living, but we got to make that happen 100%. I think we had plans, like, also, philosophy, yes, absolutely. There's still packages available too. There's pretty good packages available right now. But they might be having a sale at some point in the future. Who knows? But we had a plan to bring Broodveer across the land if we ended up living in 2 different places, because we were going to get somebody to go Broodveer and then bring them over to where we could start breeding them. It was going to be a risky situation. Probably wasn't going to work if it was like that, but we were willing to take that risk at any cost. But this is essentially how they wanted the game to start out with graphically. And I love this area right here. There's a couple more high-res examples of how the game originally looked. But overall, wait a minute, when do we start? Okay, I got to make sure that I'm on time. But overall, this is their end game. Very similar to this, when they want to get done with all the testing in their low-fidelity client, which is the pre-Illyria client. This is kind of what they're aiming for. And kind of just to showcase another one here. It's a really good one. I like this one. The technical preview was actually pretty sweet. And it was also talked about, I remember like way back when, how if you had settlements and you had like a house and things of that nature, you could actually have hidden hidden passageways and things of that nature in your home. Really cool things like that. I was remembering that sounded so awesome when I first heard about it. But I don't know how they're planning to actually do that now. In terms of that, I'm not sure what's going to happen in terms of like terraforming and things of that nature. Most of the time, when it comes to anything outside of your settlement, you can't really terraform it too much, from what I understand. Thank you so much, more. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But inside of your settlement, it sounds like we might be able to do some things that will allow us to... I don't remember that. I never got that far in the video. Holy crap. What was I doing to not get that far? That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. Chronicles of Elyria has also got its own criminal system and things of that nature that we'll go into a little bit later too. I can't afford it, but I recall there's stones or something for free to play players. Yeah, because the way that Chronicles works is, for those of you who don't know, this is a good time to go into it. Chronicles of Elyria is basically a massive multiplayer online sandbox simulation of medieval times. So anything that you think of doing that relates to anything medieval, anything that you kind of dreamed of when it came to that category as well, Chronicles of Elyria kind of seeks to provide. Fantasy-wise, it doesn't seem to want to go that route. It's more a realistic medieval. So anything like, mostly like siege warfare, buildings, crafting, fighting, anything like that is what it's kind of aiming to provide. But the way that the game actually works is that it actually runs by a... subscription system, but it's not a full-on subscription system. What it is, it's the Sparks of Life, I think is what you're thinking of. Let me go to the shop so I can show you. So basically what happens once you enter Chronicles of Elyria, your character is bound to what's called a, let me not get this wrong. Your character is bound to a spark. Where is it? Yeah, your character is bound to a spark. So essentially, your spark of life is your character's lifespan. And how I like to describe the game is that it's very similar to like Mabinogi in that regard, where if your character, let's say, is aging, because they do age over time, eventually your character will die of old age. The way it works, though, is that you'll be able to produce heirs. You'll be able to take control of NPCs if you want to, basically, your children will become NPCs at first. This is how the devs MEOW, like multiplayer, multiple evolving open world. There we go. Yeah, MEOW. There we go. I remember seeing that too. But yeah, absolutely. Whenever you have children, your character can become them. Like you can bring your spirit into theirs, but your game time is kind of tied to your spark of life. So if you were to get something like this, for instance, this probably would last you around, like as a regular player, around, let's say 5 to 6 months or so, maybe 8 months if you're really, really careful. But the spark is actually also very dependent. If you die in the game, your spark, your lifespan decides to go down. Like it'll actually go down. And depending on your stature as a character, at least this is how it used to be. I don't know if it still is. Let's say if you were a king, you were going to lose much more of your spark than if you were just like a regular person. So if you're just like a regular farmer and you die like 20 times, it still won't be as bad, like per se, as a king dying twice, kind of thing, is like a good example of it. The sparks last 12 months, assuming you don't die. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you'd probably last a while. So essentially, you're basically paying like 20, 25 bucks every 12 months or so. And that's how they kind of make it to where you don't have to pay like a monthly subscription. But at the same time, if they can like still earn, enough revenue to keep the game going. Because the game, if I understand right, they want to keep it going for about 10 years was the lifespan of the game that they're planning to provide. So they need a way probably to kind of monetize it to where they'll be able to do that easily. So this is something that kind of helps with it as well. And as you can see with like the domain selection and things of that nature, they'll probably have a lot of cases where if the game isn't, incredibly populated on launch, there will be a lot of filler stuff going on. And the thing I like about the game itself is that it's not just a situation where, like, let's say you get a Sandbox releasing on Steam, like let's say Atlas as an example, for instance. When it released on Steam, it probably had tens of thousands of players, right? So a game like that releasing on Steam, it's going to feel extremely populated off the get-go, but as time goes on, depending on what happens in the game, most of the time, games like that if they end up losing population, they start to feel pretty empty, and then that in turn draws people to kind of leave the game as a result. But what I like about Chronicles is that the world doesn't just stop there. Like if players decide to up and leave, the world keeps going on around you. So essentially, whenever you're inside your settlement or anything like that, the NPCs and things of that nature, the settlement itself expands. The NPCs, they grow. They have children. They interact with you. They interact with each other. Things like that. So it's a thing where you could essentially play it as like a single player game if you wanted to. And still have a lot of fun and be able to enjoy it to the best of, your ability. You could do pretty much anything you want to do. You could have this be a game that you play like once a week. You could play it like all day, every day. Anything you want is really up to you. And the criminal system, the way that works is that from what I remember, actually, I haven't looked at the criminal system in a while. We might have to look at a dev blog for that one. But I know that there is a criminal system, and you can set laws. So the dukes, the counts would set laws, things of that nature. The kingdom themselves would have laws, and there would also be things that would be kind of set in stone by the race that you pick. So like for Harathi, for instance, or let's say if you pick like a Weird or Dross, they're like they have different professions. So for instance, you can see that this settlement or county, or this is a county, has a priest, and that's one of the top, or has priests. And that's one of like the top professions. So a priest in this region might be a lot different than a priest in another region as well. The more you die, the more lifespan you lose, but death only occurs if you get coup de grace. Right. So your character can get permadeath, and that's what the coup de grace is. And then at that point, you would have to buy another spark of life as well. Yeah. So if you die a lot, like let's say if a duke gets trapped in a cage or something, or like they keep respawning and trying to fight somebody, for no reason, and they keep dying over and over, then they might lose their entire spark in the span of a day, kind of thing. And that's something I went into a while back as well, because it would be really, like, from what I've heard about the spirit plane, we'd have to read into a little bit more, but how it used to be is that the spirit plane, when you die, you walk basically like to your body. And I don't remember if you can resurrect at a shrine or not. I think I looked for that and I didn't see anything on a shrine, or it was proven to not have any shrines. But there is a spirit plane that you have to go through, and then that's when it does affect your lifespan as well. Getting beat in combat just knocks you unconscious. The player has to make a death move once you're down to kill you. Okay, yeah, so if you're done in combat or in the middle of a siege or something like that, then you could still, you know, have a chance of getting out alive. It's lost so much pop. Yeah, for Atlas, I know, yeah. It's so a game like that, like NPCs would really change that, which I thought going in, and I'm sure a lot of people did too, that that game would actually have NPCs. Like the trailer looked like it did have NPCs, but it didn't turn out that way for sure. But that's what I really like about Chronicles as well, though, is that we will have like a living, breathing world, a literal living, breathing world to explore. But overall, let me see if I can showcase another one. Oh, so this is another one that's a pretty good one to showcase. So there's a contract system. So the AI in Chronicles, and we've seen a little bit of this already, and they've always done, you know, QAs and things of that nature, kind of talking about the game. But let me see. Actually, this is more the QA still. Where is it? I don't know if they have a direct video for the contracts, but this is I think one of them that kind of showcases what it looked like in the old version. But essentially, contracts is a system that basically allows people to develop some kind of agreement with an NPC. Why is that on my thing? Hold on. Wait a second. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, nice. I like deforestation. So essentially what a contract is that, let's say if you have an NPC, like let's say we have a blacksmith in our village, and we want the blacksmith to create us 10 swords. You can create a contract with that blacksmith to say, hey, I want 10 of this, and you're going to make me 10 of that. I'll give you this. And then that kind of contract system also delves into player interaction as well, where as long as, I don't know, I think one time they said that it was going to be more role play at one time. I remember saying that saying, but I don't know, are contracts back as a like an actual thing to Negnar, like mechanic wise? Because what how it used to work is that contracts would be basically like you telling the NPC, you're going to do this, I'll give you that, or you could make a contract, NPC on your side, I'll gather this, you pay me that, kind of thing. They are like, are contracts still a part of the mechanics? Because I thought I heard one time that it was going to be more of a role play situation, and where you wouldn't be able to actually make a contract, it would just kind of be like a pretend contract. Or is that's still a thing, right? Like you can actually do contracts, like something like this. I remember them showcasing a look at what the contract would actually look like. So it's okay. They're not okay. Yeah, so they're still in the mechanics themselves. So you will still be able to actually make contracts both for players and NPCs. And then also, not only that, but for the NPCs, you can actually direct them on what to do. Like I remember that the AI, one of the AI showcases they did, allowed you to kind of see how this would work. But essentially, if you want an NPC, or at least how it used to be, if you wanted an NPC to walk like 50 meters in that direction, then you could essentially tell them to do that, and then gather this, and then come back and then give you that kind of thing. The world runs on contracts. Contracts are a go. Okay, so sweet. So yeah, and then I don't know if it's a thing where that thing that I just said goes through the contracts or not, but essentially, yeah, the contracts will be a very important part of the game itself, and it'll allow it to kind of make it to where the NPCs feel like players themselves, and allow you to be able to have fun. And even if you're just like the only person in your village, for instance, like for me, for instance, because Demon and I, he's my co-mayor, we've combined our packages. Our village is going to have more parcels of land, and also going to have, like, I'm signed in, right? Yeah, let me showcase it. So because we combined our packages, it'll be a baseline village, but it'll also have some benefits to it. So for instance, if I showcase one of these, for instance, what'll happen is, let's go to Green Reach. So let's say I come in here as a mayor and I want to claim a village. If I click on the lagoon, for instance, it'll say something like, 5 to 6 parcels is the baseline that it's going to start with, but it has that +9 parcels section there, right there. So what this is basically, this is the plots of land that you'll have available in your settlement. And the same thing would go for like, if a count wanted to have a village, for instance, they could also have parcels and a parcel bonus based off of that too. And then the same thing with like dukes and things of that nature. And if they have multiple packages, which most of them seem to, then they could use those packages towards getting more parcels, like it shows here. So since I have the additional mayor package, it's going to be +9 parcels on whatever village I choose, but it'll also be an increase in the amount of population that it has. So essentially, 8 to 11 is the starting population, but once that increases, there'll be like 46 plus people coming into that village, sitting at 51 plus parcels and 259 population. Very painful to work around. Yeah, like that. And the way that that's going to work exactly is that once we get in there and the expansions are added onto the villages or settlements or towns or cities, we'll be able to use what's called exposition points. And I should have the link for that too. Where is it? Hold on. Yep, here it is. So we'll be able to use what's called exposition points to actually make it to where we're able to add on to the village or the settlement, etc. We're able to expand onto it. This one works. So, oh wait, that's the developer general one. Actually, I don't want to get rid of that. Let me get rid of this one. Here we go. So essentially in this one, this is where they showcased what we would be able to use with exposition points. So if you're like a settlement owner, for instance, and you want to use things that'll help you customize your village or help you customize your town or things like that, Medi is going to make us serfs. No, hey, I'm going to be down and dirty in there too. I'm ready to get my mining on. Trust me. I will be down in there too, for sure. I'm going to be smithing, mining my butt off, guaranteed. Like, you know, if you want to know how people work, you got to work with them yourself, kind of thing. The surfiest of the surf. Yeah. He said, oh, I mean, yeah, they're right here with you. Oh my God. But no, once you have like a title, you can actually use these kits to actually add on to what you have. So for instance, these settlement kits right here, they'll allow you to, you know, add on pre-furnished buildings, or in our case, like since my settlement is going to be a mining based one or focus on crafting, depending on what kind of resources we have available, we'll be able to add with these settlement kits things like farms, or, you know, like things related to agriculture, basically farms, trade hubs, mining towns, things of that nature, things that would add on to those. So that's one thing that I'm planning on adding as soon as possible. I don't know if we'll be able to buy multiple settlement kits. I'm guessing so, but I'm currently trying to save up as much exposition points as possible, as many exposition points as possible, to kind of be ready for that kind of thing, because that's when we'll be able to design the way that our settlements are going to look. And you'll have defense kits as well, which these are really good for barons, especially because barons are more the military focus. Mayors are more the village focused ones. So mayors, they kind of run the towns, the cities, the dwellings, things of that nature. Barons, they run the forts and I believe the keeps. Might be higher packages have to run the keeps. I don't know on that one actually, but I know barons, you know, always run the forts. So essentially for a baron, if you wanted to have like a defense kit or, you know, things of the settlement kits, things of that nature, you could. And what will happen here is that anytime you see like on the domain selection map, how it says self-sustainability, I learned a lot about this after watching some of the information in the recent special event stream that they did. And the way that that works essentially is that whenever you see this, that basically means that without anybody helping at all, this is how self-sustaining they are. So if they have deficiencies like for food or anything like that, they might have to get help from other settlements or trade with other settlements. But that also means that you have to, you know, trade around. So if you have a settlement that relies on wood or has a lot of wood around you, you can use that to then trade with another settlement to get what you need. Same thing for like stone, same thing for minerals, things of that nature. So one that I want to go for, I'm probably going to go for a self-sustaining one that's low, because most of the time they seem to be the richer in prosperity. The estimated wealth of these seem to be higher. And my theory is, I don't know if it's true, but they talked about how the quality of resources may be different in one area than it is in a completely different area. So my theory is it might actually be where, you know, and maybe these lower self-sustaining areas might have higher resources or higher quality resources. I don't know. We'll have to see. but it definitely seems something, it's like something that I'm really, really interested in finding out more about. You said barons will rely on dukes and kings to pay for their defenses. They're mayors who made agreements with their dukes to run military settlements and have military responsibilities. Okay. Oh, that's right. I remember something like that's right. I remember that. Okay. Okay. So they basically have to rely on them because I remember the forts when I was looking at these too. Um, they didn't seem like they had a lot of resources like just by themselves. Like the something like this, Fort Redfall. They really don't have much of anything in terms of like resources that you can actually mine for or gather through wood. Like they don't have anything here. This it's not present. So these ones will probably be mostly the same. And if I remember right, most of the time these ones seem to be on the borders, but I haven't checked the other ones yet to see. They might be. I think one time when I was watching the stream, they had one that was in enemy territory that was not on a border, but I think they like majority are like or in strategic positions rather. Yeah, but this one doesn't have anything like they'd really be able to sell. Fresh water is good for the colony, of course, but they do have game present, foraging, fishing, things of that nature, farmland. But in terms of stuff that they can, use for crafting, not much. Any mayor can be a duke if the duke approves it. That's interesting. And then also, one thing I wondered about that too is if you could, like turn, like let's say if you start in one of these villages here, I wonder if you'd be able to turn that into a fort as time goes on because the world progresses around us. So I'm curious to see if that could become a thing at some point too. Oh, one more thing to show because we got to get started on the other showcases. So one thing that I found interesting was the silver mine design, and you absolutely can. Oh, that is nice. Yeah, because the world develops around us, so we'll be able to actually edit that stuff and expand that stuff as time goes on. I'm really excited about that part, especially because I feel like that's going to be something that really, really makes it feel like a living, breathing world. And with sandboxes, most of the time, what defines sandboxes is the history, like of all the PvP fights and all the things that have happened that are really big. Like I remember in Mortal Online, for instance, the developers. Well, this was related to the developers, but basically what happened was there was a guild that was known for actually duping, and they didn't do it often, but back when they first started, they did a lot of it, and they actually created a settlement off of that keep. And the problem in Immortal is that there were not a lot of locations. There was like designated places like in Chronicles where your keep could be placed. The only problem was there wasn't nearly as many. So what happened there was they decided one day to go in there and basically tear their entire keep to the ground because it had been built with duped materials. They didn't like that, not one bit. So when they did that, what happened was they put a bank in the middle of the keep, which happened to be sitting on a hill surrounded by basically wide open terrain. You could do it in exposition as well if you wanted. Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that. Well, not look into like becoming a baron, but look into what you can make there. Because you can get lookout towers. That's right, from exposition points, I think too. Oh yeah, but so they had this wide open area for miles, and what happened was everybody caught wind of it like almost immediately. I mean, a big keep going down, and this was like the first keep that had gone down in a while. Like in Mortal Online, when the Steam launch happened, by that point, everybody was pretty much solidified and hunkered down in their keeps. Most of the time, people didn't even have a reason to go outside that much. So you didn't see open territory like at all. If you wanted to take down a keep, you were going to need an army. And pretty much the only people who had the capabilities of doing that already had a keep, or they were RPK, which is like a wandering band of marauders that was killing people just because the sky was blue. I love those guys though. They were kind of awesome. But what happened there was when everybody caught wind of this, not only was everybody coming out to try and take out everybody there, like just try and kill them, camp them, and take all their stuff, because in Mortal, you can't really like access your bank from another location. If your stuff's in a bank, it's only in that one bank. So everybody had to try to get their stuff out as soon as possible. This was in the middle of the day too. And everybody was everybody who wanted a PvP, like everybody who was anybody who had a guild, everybody was coming out to kill people, to fight for that land, everything. Because people not only wanted to steal from them, but they also wanted to build on that keep location. So it turned into this gigantic war. And I felt so bad for the people that actually were in that guild because they didn't do anything wrong, but they just had their whole keep torn down around them and had no idea what was going on. I'm sure most of them didn't even know that the duping was going on in the beginning, but because that happened, it ended up being like one of the most legendary events of all time in Mortal. It was insane. It was absolutely awesome, and especially because of how long Mortal had been out at that time, it wasn't something that you would expect to have, like, really happen, except in the beginning of its lifespan, maybe. But after like a couple of years, they decided to do that and just smash the whole thing down. So I'm hoping that with Chronicles, and it definitely seems like it, we might get not experiences, of course, like that. Hopefully, like people duping and then building keeps and crap like that, but PvP experiences that are really worthwhile, and battles and accomplishments, things like that, that actually can really stand to be really, really renowned and really, really memorable throughout the entire history of that game. But one thing I wanted to showcase as well, one thing that really struck me as awesome the first time I saw it was the silver mine design. Now, this was one that they did very, very early on. It was back in April of 2017. I love the look of it when I first saw it. This is like one of the first things we saw for gameplay wise. But essentially, this is when they kind of showcased the tech demo of the mine itself. So I don't know if this is exactly what we can expect when it comes to the mines. I don't think we've seen some concept art. I remember of stuff that's underground, but we haven't seen a whole lot of how the caves are going to look like yet. From what I was told, though, caves will have monsters and mobs and things like that, and also will have ore. So if your settlement has more caves, it sounded like you would have more resources in there, like ore wise too. But if we did get something like this in terms of the cave itself, I think that would be insane because it does look awesome inside of this cave. I'm loving the look of it. But this is where they kind of showcase some of their parkour as well. And later towards the end of the video, they also showcase some of the combat too. But it does look really good, like the whole way through. And the only thing that ever really kind of struck people as odd was the combat system, like the features of the game itself. And I kind of picture it as like Mount and Blade, where even though I like Mount and Blade's combat, I know a lot of people do. It wasn't never really about the combat for me. Like if I had took the combat of Mount and Blade and put it into a game that didn't have the ability to kind of trek out on your own and make your own name in the world, I probably wouldn't play it nearly as much. I think Mount and Blade was more about the features and the freedom and all that you can do in the world, essentially. And I think of this game as more of like that too. I heard people who got to test it really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think what it reminded me of too was Warhorn. Because when I saw it, let me see if I can actually bring it up. Warhorn, yeah. So when I first saw the Chronicles of Elyria combat, when I first saw this game, it reminded me of the Warhorn. Actually, let me see. Let me look at one of mine. I think I have one here. Yeah, okay. So this is basically a game that's very similar. So kind of, it seemed very similar at first, the Chronicles of Elyria, but it's on a much, much smaller scale, of course. But essentially, the combat system, the animations and actions and things of that nature kind of did remind me of it. The movement a little bit as well. But I felt like when I first saw it that they might have been running close to the same engine or same kind of setup or something of that nature. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it there. Actually, let me see if I can find some more up-to-date footage on that of the combat. This is how the combat used to look in the previous version. And that was how they had it in the pre-alpha version as well. But if we come up to now, which actually, let me see if I can find it in one of their forum posts. They posted a lot of forum. Oh god, this is the design journals. Yeah, they posted a lot of good information in the general discussion, which I actually missed out on for a little while actually. But one of the first ones that I saw that had some combat in it. Let me see if I can find it. Actually, oh, how far does this go? Okay, this is July, right? Yeah, it was these kinds of ones, but this is when they first showcased like the map of how it looks. This is at the county zoom level though, of course, but this is kind of how they showcased it first. But in some of these threads, they also showcase some of the combat systems and things of that nature. If I'm able to find, I'm pretty sure it was posted by Serb. Discord media channel has it? Okay. I might have to open that. Let me see. Yeah. Let's go in. I have so many discords, it's crazy. Okay, let's go. Media. So, oh yeah, it definitely would be here. This is showcased like the sandstorm, which I'm really pumped to find out more about the dynamic weather system itself. But this is essentially what the pre-Illyria client looks like now. This is like the modernized client that we're looking at, and this is mainly for testing. Once they actually have everything worked out, that's when they're planning on upgrading to their high fidelity client, which will be later down the line for sure. And then this one, hold on. Okay. Oh snap, thank you so much, Demon. How's it going? Holy crap. 19 months. God, crazy. This is the sandstorm right here, but I want to see some rainstorms and stuff like that for sure. I've got to see some more stuff like this. I've definitely got to see some more stuff. I don't remember what exactly, what other dynamic weather systems they might have, but Chronicles of Elyria also had a lot of talk about things like, you know, dynamic events that would happen. Like there was a whole event dedicated to something called the plague. Well, basically the plague. And essentially what could happen in the game at some point is people could end up getting very sick very fast. Here's a good showcase of it. So as you can see, the combat system, it's got that particle effect that I was talking about. That's all around it now for that one. And what I liked when I first saw it too was the archery system that they have in place too. It seems like this is like the baseline version of the combat that they've got going in place. But it's definitely, of course, subject to improve. But the archery right here, this is what I loved looking at when I first saw it. I'm pretty sure they had it showcased in the video as well. This was when they first kind of showcased some of their NPC interaction as well, or how NPCs would look at you rather, if you know, whether they hated you or liked you. So as you can see, like even in the link, this is if the NPC just doesn't want anything to do with you. If you have like a hated rep, that's how they treat you. But if you have a good reputation, this is how they treat you, kind of thing. So it could ultimately be the difference between, you know, maybe having someone serve you if you want to get like a room in the inn, or, you know, get turned away. This is the archery system right here. There we go. I don't think they actually make the shot though. Yeah. It reminds me of Kingdom Come Deliverance's aiming reticle or aiming system, but a lot less difficult to work with. Because Kingdom Come Deliverance, God, I love the game, but man, I sucked at the archery for the longest time, even though I didn't use a reticle for the most part. Roger that, Negnar. Have a good one. Thanks so much for joining. But overall, I love the look of the archery system itself, and I'm really looking forward to trying that out a little bit. But I'm mainly going into smithing, though, for the most part. And then on the topic of the actual silver mine, though, this is when we first saw like how the mine was actually going to look. But we'll have to see now with their new version how they're planning on designing the caves. The map itself is huge, though. Like in terms of the actual span of the maps themselves, they span over, you know, I remember them talking about it in the YouTube video the other day, or the stream rather, that the map itself was going to span over, like, let's say, in a biome. I believe it was the I don't remember if it was in the biome or not, but basically picture 12 Skyrims, either in the kingdom itself or the biome. But essentially you would have a lot of room to move around in this game. You'll have a lot of room to explore. Like the world itself will be huge. And I'm more enthralled with if they'll be able to get that working properly on a server day one. It's strange many MMO didn't try this before. Oh yeah, because a lot of MMOs, you know, would kind of aim for something like this. This is kind of like the end game when it comes to MMOs and sandboxes, for medieval stuff at least. But a lot of them might not have the funding or be willing to go that far. Like it wasn't easy for Soulbound Studios either. They had to reiterate a lot of things. They've, you know, scrapped things before and redone systems, things of that nature. They've gone through, you know, times of having heat from the community and things of that nature. But overall, they stuck through it, and they've definitely been doing their very best to deliver. Or did they did and fail? Yeah, like they might have done it or tried to and failed essentially. So it's going to be empty as no. Well, essentially, what'll happen is that whenever you're inside of the actual areas themselves, there will be NPCs that are going around in the world. But yeah, it is a realistic thing too, where whenever you're traveling around, it won't just be like 30 minutes and you've basically, you know, crossed two maps. No, it'll be a trek, and they wanted it to be realistic in that point as well, I believe as well. Yeah, that's right. Because if you're like doing a trading run, for instance, it could be a long journey, and you need to make sure to stock up on supplies and things of that nature, depending on how far you're going, because of the map being so big and things of that nature too. And what will happen there is, yeah, but shout out to the Avatar. Yeah, that's a good example too. That's a good example too. Absolutely. But yeah, they want it to be realistic in that regard. So if you're traveling down somewhere, like let's say if you're sailing downstream from Grey Gate to Whitehaven, it's not going to take you like 10 minutes and you're there, kind of thing. No, it's got to be something that you prepare for, and might take you quite a while. Essentially, like in the old days of MMOs, like with EverQuest or World of Warcraft, things like that. Like say for EverQuest, where you might be traveling an hour just to get where you go, or if you travel an hour and you die, and then you gotta like keep trying to do a corpse run, or basically just go all the way back to where you started, kind of thing. So it's essentially like that, but on a bigger scale a bit too. Or like in any other game that really has a big map, or had big maps in those old days where you didn't have things like teleportation, and things weren't as easy to get. That's how it was. So essentially, I remember in Worm Online, for instance, that map is not nearly as big as this. But let's say if I was to explain it, the map that I was in at the time for Worm Online, at this one day, I ended up getting lost in a forest because I died, and I was trying to find my body. And what happened was, I live on the shoreline. So I lived on the shoreline, and at this time, I was in the criminal region for Worm Online because, long story short, some stuff happened. My karma went down too far. I had to bring my whole guild over with me to the chaos region, and when we landed, there was like a ton of mobs there that we had to try and quell. Like there was a lot of stuff that we had to deal with early on, and essentially, when I got lost, I had to find my way back to a shore because I was 100% sure at that point that I wasn't going to be able to find my body. And then what happened was, I basically tried to walk all the way around, and it took me literally 18 hours to do that entire run, all the way around to find my original location. And before I got back home, I actually found a settlement called Rohan. It was hilarious too, because it felt like I'd gone to Mordor and back, because they actually gave me horses and carriages when I got there, because like I was basically so tired at that point. I was so happy to just find anybody. I hadn't found anybody for hours basically, and it was so crazy. I when I was explaining this to them, they were like, "We're gonna give you supplies." They gave me horses and carriage, and then I found out they were my next door neighbors. I lived maybe like 20 minutes from them, but I found my way back home, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I never would have had that experience overall, like dodging through mobs and trying to keep my character alive the entire journey, unless they didn't make it easy to travel around. If I could have just ported back to my house, that entire experience would have been gone, never would have happened. And that's the problem with a lot of games nowadays, where a lot of people have issues with, or people that played those kinds of games back in those days that had those kinds of experiences, they don't want it to be like that. They don't want it to be where you just, travel for 10, 15 minutes and you're already there. You don't really experience anything on the way. Because in this game, it won't be just like NPCs that are in the settlements and things of that nature. There will be stuff going on in the world as you're traveling around too. Like there will be, from what I understand it, like NPCs like bandits, for instance. Of course, there will be creatures out in the world and animals and things of that nature that you'll come across. So it won't just be, and you'll also have to deal with, things like the wildlife itself, and also surviving out in the wilds while you're traveling. So it won't be just, one walk from this point, from point A to point B. There will be a lot that goes into it on that one. And one thing I wanted to show, so this is Illyria mud. And what this is like the, what was the best way to describe this actually? Crap. What's up, Altair? This is basically, like how they wanted to test out the UI originally. This is what they planned to do. They wanted us to go into, Illyria mud to test out certain aspects like the UI and things of that nature, and then after that we would go into the phase where we would actually start testing everything else essentially, and then they would move that point on to launch. That got scrapped around, when was this video made actually? 2017, around I think 2017 endish or 2018. That around there got scrapped. And what happened next was the pre-Illyria client started being the thing that they wanted to test stuff out instead. Thinks back to when he traveled from Aerodin to feel the bone as a level 1 Erudite. Yeah, stuff like that. Like I would have never gotten experiences like that without, you know, that hardcore nature being in place for the game. That's why I love the idea of a game like Pantheon, for instance, and the other games that are coming out that don't have that kind of ease of access when it comes to travel. I dare you to check your Discord messages from a certain cute girl. I can't do anything like that right now. Nope. We got to keep this PG, okay? It's done 100%. 100%. This is Vox Illyria right now, okay? This is an important topic. This actually I was really excited about too because it reminded me of like a 3D Minecraft or top-down Minecraft. Iridan was as far west as you could go, and you know the Field of Bones was as far west as you could go. Yeah, essentially, my God, the travel was crazy in that game. I remember too. Even like EverQuest, trying to get from one place to the next, I think took me like 30, 40 minutes or so to an hour. But I loved it so much, actually. I love the experience that had, though, that gave, because I feel like I wouldn't have had the experience of, well, dying, of course, too, but that also gave me more drive to want to actually get there. And when I got there, I felt more satisfied as a result. But overall, these Q&As is a lot of when they kind of answered the questions that the community had, and they kind of showcased some more stuff in certain parts. I'm trying to find the footage that they had of the tribes. That was pretty early on, too. Aerodin to feel the bone was 7 hours. Holy crap. God, that would be nuts. That babe, please. I can't do it. Nope, this is Vox Illyria right now. But essentially, in this game, though, when you are like traveling around like with your friends and things like that, you'll be able to do things like hunting. You'll be able to do things like gathering. Pretty much anything that you want. You mean the character creation video? They did some early models there. Oh, yeah, I think it's that one. Okay, let me find it. There it is. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Thank you. Okay. So this is kind of when we get to showcase a little bit or look at a little bit of how the races look. Oh, wait, I think someone might have put a timestamp in here. Hold on. Nobody put a timestamp? Wait, what, the knee cracking? Oh, I'm not looking at that. I think I remember that timestamp actually too. Hold on, skipping ahead. This is the one, right? Illyria live stream. Yeah, okay. This is kind of when we get to look at that. Don't look at that part though. But essentially, how it starts off too is that you can choose things like for your character, like the birthday, things of that nature, and you kind of choose, if I remember right, how old your character starts out as. Let me see. Yeah, okay, it's right there. Yeah, actually. But anyway, you can also choose, of course, things like if you become a ward of a family, because there are families in the game, and they work a lot like I would say maybe Game of Thrones kind of thing, where once you jump into not the Game of Thrones, it sucks. So when it was good, but anyway, it works in the sense where when you jump into the game, you can become another person's ward. You can become like a ward of a duke, for instance. You could ward start at 12, family is 15, and non what is that, NTC? Is that for NPCs or no? It's not, isn't it? Because I know offline playing characters. Oh yeah, our characters too. When we go offline, we become offline playing characters, OPCs. Right, so we still do our daily activities in the game and things of that nature when we're offline too. You said I will break up with you? Bring it! Don't you dare. The graphics in this look so good. Excited to see the whole game turn out like that. I know, I'm really pumped about that too, because the pre-Illyria client, I like the look of it. Like some of the screenshots that they've showcased from the pre-Illyria client. Let me see if I can find it actually. Not that. Well, that one is one in the pre-Illyria client, but the Toresk village that we saw recently, that looked awesome to me. I don't know if it's in this one actually. Oh, well, this is actually a showcase of like how the is this the mines? Oh snap! This was the concept that I saw. I remember this one now. This is like the desert mine. I'm kind of curious about the Harathi, because the Harathi, those would be ones that would mainly be underground. They would be more subterranean rather than on the ground, above the surface as well. You'd probably see very few, if not, any at all, above ground buildings for Harathi. Maybe things like you know, taverns and, you know, rest halls, things of that nature. But overall, most of the stuff will be underground. Non-traditionals, it's mainly for NPCs, but it could be family members from a bloodline. Okay, gotcha. Okay, and I think because I'm trying to think of what adds on to that there. Like, oh yeah, when your children become before they come of age, and like when they're like of age, they're NPCs until you're ready to take over from them, kind of thing, if I remember right. So when you produce an heir, you know, they can do things like they grow themselves, and since the world grows around you, all that kind of stuff is all done at the same time, basically. And this was a showcase of like the map generation demo as well. And they explained a little bit of this during the stream, the special event stream, on how they actually designed the domain selection map and how it was mainly like not handcrafted. It was done with a set of rules. Like it was essentially procedurally generated, but there was an algorithm that they developed for creating that map. We are basically dwarves, essentially, yeah. And Harathis can grow beards, but that I've been told, but they choose not to for religious reasons. We're gonna fix that up though, you know, like immediately once we get in game. I mean, Harathi without a beard, no, we're changing that, hardcore. This is another showcase of one of the races as well. Hold on. At first glance, what, Irishi? What the hell? Oh my god, I forgot all about the Irishi. He's single now. He broke my heart. I've always been single. Kipik. But there are the Kipik, the Dras, the Genoa, the Broodveer, all of these different races. They all have different cultures and different lifestyles. Like the Weird, I'll never forget the Weird, of course. They are these like we are the world kind of hive mind crew where they basically share everything. And this was something that was a topic for dispute for a long time, but I thought it was hilarious. And at one point I was like, you know what? If we were weird, it wouldn't be so bad. But essentially they believe, I don't know if this is still a thing, of course, but they believe culturally that everything should be shared. So essentially, if you go into somebody's house and decide to take a bath, that's okay, kind of thing. Irishi? Oh. Yeah, actually, I completely forgot all about the Irishi. But the Naran, that would probably be like the closest depiction of a human. And they will be, there will be Narans near our territory, and I believe a little bit inside of the territory that we'll be in as well. They won't be available at launch, but Irishi and Midari will have to be discovered. Oh, that's right. And I remember as well that there would be like NPC kingdoms that would be in the game. And I think if I remember right, there would be, yeah, like places that we'd have to discover, kind of thing. Bearded beauties, exactly. Like Gimli says, there are no dwarf women. Or no, well, he thinks that. I bet there are. We'll find out. We'll find out. The Lost Tribes, right? Exactly. So places that you have to actually discover, kind of thing. Absolutely. That sounds awesome to me too. I can't wait to see what that's going to entail. But in this one, what is this, Harathi? That's ours. So, I mean, that looks legit. I don't know what Gimli was talking about. They're 100% our dwarf women. Oh, wait a minute. What the hell? What? He's got a goatee. Wait a minute. I thought that was a religious thing. Okay, well, from the start, if it's possible, we're doing that. Okay? We got to have beards, no matter what. Every single one of them. And this is the Dross. I remember these guys, they always remind me of like the Kurgat Khan from Mountain Blade. Or I think I pronounced that wrong, but essentially they feel like more nomadic. I haven't looked at their kind of backstory in a little bit of time, but all of these different races, they all have their different, you know, specialties and things like that. Even crafting wise, like all these different races, whenever they start out in a location, like let's say, since our region is mainly Harathi, Naran, and Broodveer, and luckily, there's quite a few Broodveer in our locations up here too. Not a lot, but 11% of the population kind of thing, which isn't, you know, too bad, of course. But we gotta change that really quick. We gotta make more Broodveer for sure. But essentially, what we make over here, crafting wise, what we farm, things like that, will be completely different from what they'll be farming like down south, for instance. Like what are they called? Where are they? Not the Broodveer, the Dross. The one of these is more like wetlands based. I believe it might be weirder, I think, or desert based. Let me see. I'm getting all fumbled here. Is it Dross, Kipik? Kipik are more like attuned to nature. Toresk. There we go. Toresk are more wetlands based. There we go. Yeah. So they'll be farming something completely different than we will be over in our area, which that's going to be pretty cool because like trading wise, if you want to get something pretty exotic, then you'll be able to wait. Genoa, are they the wetlands one? Uh-oh. You said it's about Illyria. Oh, you're fine, Altair. No worries. No, because we can talk about other examples too about like how this game will kind of turn out in other examples from other games that we've seen. Like this was one of the ones that I really liked. This was kind of like the kingdom lore that they showcased.
Conquest to become emperor of all the known lands of Illyria. Enslaving men, women, and children, he dispatched the ones capable of holding a sword to the far reaches of his empire to encroach upon the lands of Fortuna. But in the summer of 696, when the old had perished and the children had known no other life than war, the deranged king's reign came to an end.
That's something that, speaking of which, if you didn't hear that, she was basically talking about how there was a deranged king that ended up dying. Well, as you can see by this picture here. But one thing that always kind of struck me as interesting about Chronicles, everything that happens in the game, it's not all set in stone. So in terms of like what people get in the beginning, and because this was a cause of concern for like people thinking that the packages were like pay to win, for instance. The way that essentially works is that whenever things like the citizens are held, which are held every like 16 years, that's when everybody like that is like representative in a kingdom can get together and kind of talk about things like political struggles or border splits, things like that, and things of that nature. So people that are in positions of power, they might not always be there. I was thinking Jungle Rivers. Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. Oh, Genoa's jungle. Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah. But essentially, yeah, there's not coup de grace, but there's like rebellions that can happen in the game. There is shifts in power, all kinds of things like that. Person who's king now might not be king 6 months down the line, depending on what happens there. Now, trying to overthrow a king is something that's not going to be an easy task at all, especially if you're coming in as someone who, doesn't have a lot of support or anything like that. That would be a very obviously hard task to do. It's like a realistic medieval simulation where if you put all of us as players inside of a medieval world and give us the same tools that we had back in those ages and give us the same possibilities, it's kind of like wondering what would happen in that regard. So there will be a lot of wars, there'll be a lot of treaties being made and subterfuge, espionage, all kinds of betrayals, things of that nature. So in the game, these packages, for instance, that could completely change like a year down the line. This is just like helping build the world from the start, essentially. So that's what I think about as like a mayor. Also, what's up, homie 3908? How you doing? Toresk live in multiple biomes: tropical wetlands, tree savanna, and tidal marsh. Gotcha. Okay. So even they might be growing some different things as well, depending on where they're living too. But that's one part that I like too. But like me thinking about it as like a mayor, for instance, I'm probably going to be hopefully trying to remain as safe as possible when it comes to territory expansion, the territory wars, things of that nature. Because what could easily happen is that if there's a big war that goes on, and then one side ends up losing or one side ends up winning and taking over a bunch of land, and then changing people out, kind of thing. Like if in my standpoint, I think that if I owned anything higher than like a village itself, that I'd be at a major disadvantage, because it's actually kind of hindering yourself in a way, because you kind of put yourself more at risk. Your lifespan goes down faster for that regard, and then also in terms of wars and things like that, political struggle, you have more to manage, and you also have more risk if things like that do happen of losing it too. Ruling a kingdom would be too much of a job for me, where I'd want to enjoy the game without that stress. Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Aiming for a village for in domain selection. Yeah, I got a couple that I'm thinking of already, but our section is in the Kingdom of Ashland. And oh wait, let me get out of Tyria. Hold on. Wait, where am I right now? Oh, duh. Yeah. So we're inside of Ashland, sorry. And the duchy that I'm going to be living in is Starmore with my duke, and I've got an idea on a couple different villages in this place as well where we're going to be living. And I'm really interested to see how the crafting system kind of plays out. My friend and I, we combine packages, so we'll have a double mayorship going on essentially. So ours should kind of double up. It'll add 9 parcels of land on whatever we choose, and then also for the estimated population, it'll add about 46 population onto that as well. So I'm really excited about that too. I cannot wait to try out that. And even the self-sustainability, this meter right here, I'm not too worried about that because I'm thinking of going with one that's actually pretty low, but it has some really, really good resources like the stone and certain resources like that. Like minerals for me are going to be really important. And the one that I want to go for has an abundance of a couple of these, which is really nice to see. Or one of those, or 2 of those rather, it has an abundance of, and I love it a lot. As with all rules, if they don't know how their vassals work, then they don't deserve the crowns. Look what happened in these worlds in our history. They got killed. Right, exactly. And EP, yeah, that's exactly what I'm planning on. I'm planning on saving up as much EP as possible. I don't have a lot right now, just 1625 in terms of exposition points. But that's something that I'm planning on doing as well. Exposition points, and we went over this a little bit earlier, that'll allow you to kind of design your settlement to kind of, you know, add more onto it. So once the actual settlements are chosen and things of that nature, later on down the line, we'll be able to use that. And is this coming out on Steam? Nope, I don't think so. Nothing announced for Steam yet. That might be something in the future that might happen, but at the moment, nothing. Nothing Steam based yet. Is this game out? No, it's not. But they did release the maps themselves, the domain and settlement selection maps, which, speaking of which, let me go back to that right now here. They've actually released them, so now we can kind of take a look at what exactly the lands are going to look like. They actually put a lot of detail into them as opposed to what we once saw, or what we saw before rather. We can actually see what resources will be available in these settlements and counties and duchies and kingdoms, things of that nature, essentially. But right now, we definitely wanted to talk about a bit about the game and just kind of showcase what we'd be able to do in the game, the possibilities and things like that. Can't wait to select the duchy. Yeah, essentially, that's going to be insane too. Like, it's really exciting. In terms of the actual activity, like on the Reddit, for instance, there were used to be like a lot of mention about people being worried about how the game would turn out and things like that. Because like we said before, you know, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There was times where they were under fire from the community and things of that nature for certain things, but they worked through it. They kept going, and you know, they had to rebrand systems and things of that nature. But now we're here, and it seems to be coming along really great, really good. Now, in terms of the future, of course, we still want to make sure that we hope and just kind of watch and see how it goes. But overall, it's really good to see how far the game is expanding so far. Like, it seems to be getting a lot of traction. It seems to be getting a lot of stuff done now, especially too. Even with the pre-Illyria client, we started to see a lot of footage. We started to see a lot of, you know, concept art, things of that nature. All kinds of stuff that we're seeing now from that. That's kind of giving us way more of an insight about that too. Love the look of it. That actually, in the pre-Illyria client, in places like this, I actually do like the look of it quite a bit. I think that for the pre-Illyria, it's definitely extremely acceptable for what we're going to get in the alpha testing phases, which the alphas, those probably won't be anything that are under NDA, or maybe alpha 2 would be, if not alpha 1. I don't think alpha 1 would be. But all the packages, like the mayor packages and counts and stuff like that, all that's gone now. So at this point, all that's left for pledge packages is like starting out the Illyrian for $45, or when the game actually comes out, all you need to buy is what's called a Spark of Life, which we talked about earlier. That'll just be tied to your actual character. Seeing your Discord tilts me so hard. Seeing my Discord? Why? It's in dark mode. Oh, well, you mean all these? Oh, yeah, because, well, man, they only give you 100. The struggle is real. I mean, I never thought I'd have to say that too. I hate it. I hate that I have to say that. Like 100, so many. And then you just start following all these games and crap, and then all those notifications. Oh, I have to mute them all. God, yeah. I have to mute every single server pretty much. Could you imagine? Oh my God, no. Oh no. Some of them are very relentless too with their notifications. Yeah, no kidding there. I have to go through them sometimes and just kind of clear out the notifications because I get a little annoyed at that too. But yeah, dear God. But there's a lot of different like information out there and things like that for Chronicles, and different groups and things like that out there. There's already a ton of different kingdoms, duchies, counts, all kinds of things like that already formed. I'm already in one as well. I'm actually really excited to wear something like that. Holy crap. I would wear the crap out of that, or smith the crap out of that in our regions. But for Harathi, that might not look as good, but I'd love to see that on maybe like passing by Naran. What are you going to be playing today? Or is this a rundown? This is just an entire thing dedicated to Chronicles of Elyria today. Essentially, what I wanted to go into was kind of the aspects of it, and with the domain and settlement selection coming out, I wanted to kind of go into it and learn a bit more about it myself too, because there's always been things that I've been curious about when it comes to Chronicles, but it feels sometimes like things might change under my nose before I even realize it. And like they had so many developer journals back in the day, for instance, but a lot of some of this stuff was actually kind of transitioned out, and it's been replaced with new mechanics and things like that, especially like the crafting system, which I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about as well. Oh god, her eyes looked pretty insane. Which one was that? What character was that? Or race was that? I completely forgot. I don't think it's a Naran. Maybe it is. Is this game going to be your main game you stick with? Oh, Midari. Oh wow. Holy crap, that looks really exotic. That's the one that I always want to go for, is the crafting. God, I need to always see the crafting stuff. For me, what I'm waiting for, like in terms of games that I stick with, I'm planning on a set few of games, because mainly the reason that I game hop so much right now is there's really nothing that I could say I could dedicate more than, like, let's say 2 weeks or 3 weeks to, or even like a few months to. But a game like this, or like Mountain Blade Bannerlord, for instance, I would definitely classify that as a game that, yeah, I would always stick to that. Like it would become a part of my day, essentially. So even if I do play another game, I would still be playing this pretty much all the time, too. You said life sucks. Oh god. See, but this was kind of like how they went into the crafting aspect a little bit, but it does. But sometimes, no, it always does. You're right, philosophy. You're right, man. But overall, though, I'm more interested in learning about how the crafting experience is going to go, because for me, I decided, I learned that in Sandboxes, the crafting aspect was like the most enjoyable part. So I think that for me personally, this is the thing that I'm really meant to do in a game like this. When the crafting system is actually good and you can make a difference with it, I think I definitely enjoy it the most, for sure. Which is strange to say, because I typically love combat, but ever since I tried Mortal Online, I absolutely fell in love with the idea of crafting. But most of the time on the Reddit, right now at least, there's a lot of course, memes going around and things like that, but there's podcasts and things of that nature. Definitely love those guys as well. They do a really good job. And, there's always posts about, if you still have faith in the project and things like that. The way I see it, the way I used to see it, rather, is whether it came out or not, I'm glad to have at least backed it and kind of hoped for it, like hope for the dream. And it's not a healthy thing to do when it comes to Kickstarter games, or pretty much any game that has a backing. But honestly, these games over the past few years, a lot of them have sucked so much that sometimes just hoping for something seems to be more enjoyable than playing the worst game in the world, or like forcing yourself to play it. Thank you so much, X. Have you played it at all? No, there's no testing phase. Well, there is testing phases right now, but I'm not in those. I'm in Alpha 2 for my support package, but there's people that are in Alpha 1 right now and have pre-alpha access. Yeah, like mine's Alpha 2 right there. There we go. Alpha 2 on that one. But yeah, essentially for this game, what happens there is whenever we do get access to those testing phases and things like that, we'll be able to choose our land. Well, we'll already have our land chosen by that point, because domain and settlement selection, that's the next thing that's coming up. So essentially we'll be able to hopefully experience what we've chosen and kind of play around with it and expand onto it too. The ocean dwelling tribe, they can see underwater, or I should say have special lenses. Right, and I remember for Harathi, for instance, they actually had the ability to see in caves. Like they had this ability, this innate ability to actually see in the dark kind of thing. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but that's something that I'm pretty excited about as well when it comes down to that part too. And it's like each of the races themselves are not just like the regular old characters that might just have stat bonuses and things like that. It is still a thing. Nice, I like it. But yeah, essentially they'll have special effects and things that they can do as well. But overall, we pretty much went into most of like how the game exactly works and what to expect from it. They did also do like jousting design documentaries and things like that. One thing that I always love watching is the actual jousting itself. Where is that video actually? Unless this is it. They did something at PAX East too. They did an event there, but let me see if I can find it in the video. It must have been like a pledge package over $200. It was. Yep, it was. It was. This is just you talking. Yeah, there's nothing to play right now. The most that we have really is like domain and settlement selection, but this is something that I've definitely wanted to do for a little while. And okay, I've always wanted to ride on a horse like that. Actually, I will be honest. I looked at the site. Not many pledge packages, honestly. Yeah, they actually got rid of some because they're no longer available, basically. So like when you look at the pledge packages, if I go back to the store, for instance, anything that's like mayor down, so like mayor, count, duke, king, queen, things like that, those are all gone. Now it's just these. They've taken some of those out. And these ones, they do give you some benefits, of course, in terms of, you know, like, what's it called? Things that you start with. You can buy extra stuff in the merchandise store, which a lot of people kind of, or well, some people turns them off from, like, kind of doing that kind of thing. But if you wanted to have extra stuff, then you could essentially buy Founder's Map. What is that? Detailed map of your country? Is that what I'm getting there? Or county? But you could buy these essential things in the shop as well. The ones that aren't sold out, that is. Like the starter pet, for instance, too. Some of them are pretty cheap, and they do give you credits in the shop depending on what you... I forgot when they did that, actually. I think... Because I had $11 in credits the other day, but I ended up buying a village token. If you're... the cool thing about Chronicles, too, that I wanted to go into is that it's not just for people that want to own land and play the political game and things like that. There's also room for people that just want to play the game like an MMORPG. Like if you want to play, or like an MMO, but with like friends or guildies, things like that. There's a lot of ways to do it with friends. But if you want to actually do it with like an actual guild, aside from having the actual village or town or city or, you know, county, duchy thing itself, there's also guilds as well. Like, and they actually run on their own specific system aside from everything else in the settlements too. So essentially, if you're a leader of a town, for instance, or if you're like a mayor in a town, you can essentially invite guilds to join you, and then whatever they do in the town, that of course would add to the prosperity of the town itself as well. So that's part that I'm really excited about as well. These guild tokens aren't required or anything like that. This is more just for like expanding your guild before the game comes out. But this is basically them monetizing that thing. And then on the other side, villager tokens, this is something that can increase your population overall, and then also the actual parcels of land that you get access to. And like some notes I took about to move on into notes about the actual map itself. What's cool about this map too is that, like, for instance, if we look at the legend, a lot of the things on the map actually mean something. So like you said, you're a mayor, so does that mean I could never be a mayor myself, become a mayor myself? No, you can. The cool thing about Chronicles 2 is that the people that bought mayorships, like me, for instance, or people that bought like duchies and counties and things like that, they aren't set in stone in that spot forever. What'll happen once the game starts is that if you're coming in from the first time, like as a free-to-play player, for instance, it would take you a while, of course, to earn that kind of influence and earn the trust of people around you and things like that. But if you wanted to become a mayor, for instance, you could work through the political chain, and then also, you know, if people are not satisfied with the current mayor and things like that, they could end up voting them out and vote you in. And then if you want to, you know, let's say if you work your way up to being a duke and you want to take advantage of a situation, you know, you got, let's say later down the line, one of the kings gets switched out. Like, let's say Blackheart decides that, hey, Illyria hasn't been doing too hot lately. The king that's replaced them, or the queen, has been kind of running the place into the ground. Blackheart might be able to take advantage of that, and it's possible to own multiple kingdoms as well. So they could eventually, but from what I remember, that would be something that would be insanely nuts. But yeah, that is something that you could end up doing too. Like dukes, for instance, you go down into the duchy view, then let's say Longbrine decides Waterhome, it pissed them off. They could eventually, like throughout so many different means, take control of Waterhome as well. So it's a numbers game. What if some big ass guild with thousands of players just roll in around voting everyone out? Well, it won't be as easy as that, but at the same time, that is something that could potentially happen. Like it's not necessarily a numbers game, because the people that are in those positions, those people have to, it's like I picture like the guild 2, for instance. That's how I picture the political system in this game, where it would take more than just one guild to kind of do that thing. Or if like a guild had 1,000 players and let's say they wanted to take out a kingdom from the inside, if that kingdom fights back and doesn't like that guild, but let's say that someone kind of likes the idea, they want to take advantage of that, like let's say a duke likes that idea and they want to take advantage of another duchy, so they say, hey, you guys can operate out of secret in my capital, and then you can start embedding yourself into other duchies and things like that over time. That's kind of Chronicles of Elyria in a nutshell. But at the same time, if the king decides, I don't like what's going on here, this duke of mine is committing treason, he can go in there and basically burn that duke's house to the ground and then kick him out, put in a new duke, and then basically excommunicate all those guild members as well. We'll pay 100 G for everyone to here to vote out the mayor. Right, and something like that, even could happen. Like you could pay off a vote if you wanted to, but it wouldn't be as simple as just like going to the nearest what's it called? It wouldn't be like going to the nearest village and offering to pay everybody to vote someone out kind of thing. There's much more to it than that, and we have to learn more about it as time goes on, because the political system is not something that they really touched on in depth too much just yet. But that's essentially like the gist of it, of how it would work. But there will be also, like when the game actually is out, there will be hidden places to find. Like there will be actual NPC kingdoms and things like that. So let's say if a big guild did roll in and wanted to go over and start working their way into taking that stuff down, which I'd imagine would be harder because an NPC is not going to give a crap if you have 1,000 people are paying 1,000 gold, I'd imagine. But there are contracts and things like that you can form with the NPCs, so you might be able to pay off some of them at a time. But essentially, that's something that they could do. You could eventually take over an NPC kingdom, essentially. And then people just rolling in with an army and take stuff to PvP. Well, no, because there's laws in place and things of that nature. So in terms of the actual sieges and like how things are going to work when we get into the towns, that part hasn't been explained too much yet actually either. But we will be able to set laws. So we know what laws we'll have. So like if we don't want fighting in a specific region, we can set that. And then if people break that law, well, the NPCs that are fighting alongside us, like we can, let's say if a big guild decides to come over to Green Heights, they go into Green Heights and they attack Titan Step. Well, whoever's Duke of that region would probably have to sally up some NPCs and sally up some actual people, which unless that guild has 1,000 players, and even then they might be outnumbered regardless, because you're going to have like an actual army of NPCs and then players on top of that you can order around. That Duke can come over there and basically put that in its bed. Like they can basically beat the crap out of them and leave them in graves, essentially. So that's something that people would always have to consider. Even if you have 1,000 people, there's always things in place that will be there to gate you. Like a king, if a king's got his eye on you on 1,000-person guild and is like, I don't want that guild in my kingdom, they could set laws and excommunicate people like that. They could do things to make it to where it'd be very difficult. And not to mention, if somebody came in the middle of town and was like, I'm gonna pay 100 gold to vote this dude out, and that guy like puts a bounty on your head, or that guy makes a law where you're like banned from that town under penalty of death, well, that's gonna be very hard to do at that point, and to get to the town hall and make it there alive. Don't up the taxes to unbearable and we'll be fine if you end up like King George. Oh god, no, that's not something I would do, but taxes would be a thing as well. But no, for me, how I plan to run my village is it's more going to be like a mining town / crafting town, because like with Negnar, for instance, my Duke, we have an understanding, like from Life is Feudal, when I did play that, I was like always like when I worked my way up to being the guild blacksmith. I was always like pumping out armor and stuff for people. Like I wouldn't ask people to mine for me or anything like that. I would always be out in the mines myself doing it because that's what I enjoyed. So I'll be doing the work too, like inside of the mines, the caves, things like that. I might have alt accounts and things like that, depending on how that stuff kind of works. But essentially, yeah, I'll definitely be rolling through that stuff too. I'll be rolling through the dirt as well. Also, what's up, Dark? How you doing? But yeah, it's really cool, like the way that stuff works too. And the NPCs, that's what really kind of makes it a tiebreaker as well, because the NPCs, being able to actually control them, like as a king, have them under your command, or a duke, have them under your command, even a mayor and things like that, because there'll be town guards and things of that nature, and be able to set laws. There's things in place that will kind of prevent that kind of thing from happening. But if there's like a band of outlaws, because this may look like it's very tight in like practice, but in reality, there's actually a lot of land between the actual settlement and everything else. So like, let's say if a guild of 100 people wanted to come over to Pebblehorn, and let's say they decide to set up shop in the mountains, that's something that from what I understand could be possible. Are there dungeons and raids? Yes, actually dungeons are a thing. Raids, in terms of something like that, I don't think there's like a traditional raid, like of course you wouldn't be able to queue up for it, but there are. Oh, yes. Okay, so yeah, there are things out in the world that would be considered a raid. Like, for instance, there's a lot of hidden things in Chronicles of Elyria. So essentially, there's like, for instance, a lich that we found out a long time ago. Someone in Chronicles of Elyria could eventually learn magic, right? Because nobody starts out with that kind of thing. That's something that could, per random event, could happen. There's also random events like a lich. So let's say if you go into a random cave one day, let's say it's straight out of a horror movie or straight out of an action movie, you find this glass vial sitting on a pedestal, and this wraith comes out at you. You don't know what the hell's happening, but you kill it, or you destroy the vial, and then maybe something happens that basically causes you to become a lich. What you can do is that you're probably not going to be allowed into any towns for sure, but you'll be immortal. Your character won't age like everybody else's. So you could be the raid boss, essentially, and there would be things like that would be considered raids. But one thing I want to go into in just a second, could you make a home out in random areas? So in terms of actually terraforming and things like that, that's only done in the settlements themselves. But in terms of like making, camps and things like that in random areas, and, if you wanted to set up shop in a random area, from what I understand, that would be possible. And actually, in terms of creating an actual town, that's something that we'd have to find out more about, like, as time goes on, because I know that in terms of the actual terraforming and making a town like from scratch, you wouldn't just be able to go out and do that right then and there, because there would be, when it comes to a settlement, there's so much more than just the players themselves and the buildings there. There's also these NPCs, like the NPCs that are living out their lives and running through all this code, and you can command them and make contracts with them and things like that. So just having some random dude like be able to create a small shanty village and have like 100 NPCs there, something like that wouldn't be possible for sure, like sustainable. It would probably like lag the crap out of the server. So that's why that kind of thing, like the most I think you'd be able to do is create camps and things like that. Maybe bandit hideouts or hideouts themselves would be like acceptable in those kinds of woods. So it's not a traditional MMO in every way. Even calling it a sandbox is grossly underselling it. I hope SPS gets the message across, because it's truly groundbreaking. Yeah, it's something that like goes much farther than like traditional MMOs or anything like that. It's like a massive multiplayer, basically medieval simulation. Like they give us the tools to basically do what you could in medieval times with the basically the area that we would probably have, or well, maybe more than what we'd have actually, but similar to what we'd have in medieval times, and see what you do with it basically. But yeah, in terms of like the land itself and what you can do in the world, that's up to you. And if you're like a mayor or something like that, you can set laws how you want it. So if you wanted to have an area, like let's say the Kingdom of Illyria, PvP is enabled in this kingdom everywhere. Or let's say if Valeria, if they have a baseline rule set where, let's say, maybe killing people outside of towns is overlooked. You can set your own laws, but let's say in the county or the duchy of Stone Spring, they completely outlaw it, no killing at all. But Red Sap is like more laid back than that. You can even kill somebody outside of town and they're not going to care. You could do that kind of thing. Basically, it's like walking into SimCity in third person and being able to take the role of any one of your citizens. Right, exactly. Doesn't that mean it's just a fantasy life sim then? Pretty much. Well, yeah, pretty much. It goes. Yeah, I'd say more fantasy life because there are things. It does mainly go for like medieval realistic themes, but there are things in the game like magic, for instance. If that's still going to be a thing in the future, that would kind of make it more fantasy as well. Even though we did have some forms of magic, but still. And then there will be like dynamic events like the plague. Like they actually had a full-on plague event one time as well. I actually played that too. It was really fun. Actually, let me see if I can find it too, just to kind of showcase what it looked like. Because let's see, Chronicles of Elyria plague event, Searing Plague. That's what it was called. Yeah. So the Searing Plague, essentially what happened there was people that didn't have a pledge package were basically allowed to come on the site and do this event where they could infect people the people like the plague itself, or they could do things like there was all kinds of special things that you could do. Like you could hire doctors and things like that. It was basically like a text-based game within the browser, but it's something that actually would affect the game itself in the future. Like in terms of when the game actually is said and done and everybody's out in the world, a plague could actually happen and kill off like half your population. Essentially, is something that definitely could happen. And what you decide to do at that point is going to essentially, tell you like or show you how your colony survives or how many people survive in your colony. How's this game? We haven't had the chance to play it yet. They did release what we're looking at now is basically the map of all the domain selection that they've kind of piled together and thrown at us. So basically, we're able to actually see what resources will be available in what locations. We're able to see what towns and professions we might have, but we don't have the ability to play yet. Some people do. There is a testing phase going on, but we don't have access to it right now. I'm only in Alpha 2, not Alpha 1, so I'll have to wait on that one too. But one thing I wanted to go into as well, also, how's it going, Grixis, is that in terms of like dungeons, that's an actual 100% thing too. So in terms of like raid, like finding, like a lich out in the world, like we talked about before, something like that would probably be pretty rare. But dungeons and mobs inside of them, that's something that would actually be pretty common. For instance, let's say if we're in, let's say Longley, okay? Well, let's say if this town right here, okay, this is a stone quarry town, as you can see right there. And it also says that it has an abundance of caves, and it's the second most abundant. And then as you can see in the professions, this kind of tells you what professions you might expect to see from the NPCs in this village or in this town. So a dungeoneer is essentially exactly that. So if you wanted to become a dungeoneer, for instance, you could. And the NPCs themselves, some of them have different ranks, for instance. Like some of them have different expertise, and because the NPCs kind of evolve as the world goes on, the NPCs themselves would get better and better at their craft too, essentially, from what I understand. So a dungeoneer could teach you how to become a dungeoneer, and then you could charge people to basically go clear dungeons for them. Or if you wanted to have a dungeoneering guild, if you wanted to have a mining guild, things of that nature, get paid officially by the village mayor themselves, or let's say if you got a let's go a little bit more militaristic. So let's say we're looking at like a keep or barony. Let's see, where was it actually? Well, let's go back to Starmore. I'm adopting wait and see approach with this. Yeah, because it's a game that's very ambitious. So definitely like adopting that wait and see approach is definitely something that's pretty smart to do with any games that are crowdfunding entirely. But absolutely. So there's something like this, for instance, like the fort. Let's say if a trading guild comes through and wants to offer to go from, to travel to Redfall Lake, but they want to come from, hold on, I gotta zoom out. Okay. So they want to bring, forage, like berries and things of that nature, spices, game from Agriel, or let's say if they want to go all the way up to Brownhorn and they agree to bring farming products all the way down to the fort for a set amount of money, let's say a month or let's say a week. They can do that. The contracts is a big part of the game and how not just NPCs and players interact, but also players and players interact. So if you want to give a player a contract to make you 10 bronze axes, you could. And then you can say exactly how much you're willing to pay for that and things of that nature. And because of the diplomacy system and the laws, if a count or a mayor decides to say, if you don't fulfill this contract or if you don't fulfill your contract, hey, you're gonna actually, have a bounty on your head, then that might be something that you'd be able to do as well. So that way you'd never have to worry about getting cheated out of something, essentially. But overall with this game, what will happen here with the military stuff is that going into the military, less on the resource side, things like expansions and things like that, military expansions, that stuff's going to happen all the time for sure. There will be things like sieges going on. Well, probably not all the time, but when it does happen, it will be basically all the time. Like a war could last, months. And let's say Silver Dust Heights or the Kingdom of Aranor and the Kingdom of Valeria. Dang it, Valeria. Holy crap. They decide to go to war with each other. And then, Ashland is kind of in the middle here and they're just watching it unfold, but they don't want to get involved. But what's it called? Illyria is willing to say, hey, what's your name? Holy crap. Tyria says to, let me go back out of this view actually. There we go, much better. All right, so Tyria says to Aranor, hey, we will attack Valeria from the back and we will actually go for their capital if you pay us this or if you do this for us. Or if you help us with Blackheart. So you sell your men all the way down to Blackheart and you attack them from the north. We'll help you take out Valeria, kind of thing. And it's not just about like, just a simple war and, the fighting's done in like the span of a few days or so. Like it's something that with how big the maps are and like how in-depth the territory system is and just everything in general in the game, it's something that could span over, literal actual like a month or two in terms of a war. And then at the end of it, there could be peace treaty signed. There could be no peace at all. There could be all these things that could be happening, and the scale of the world will really make that kind of transport meaningful, etc. So absent leaders may lead to lawless zones. So yeah, what could happen there? Because like, for instance, this could become, places could become lawless zones, for instance. Well, I would imagine like to some constraint, because even if you like, let's say, have a completely lawless place like Skyhead in the duchy, the kingdom itself might still have baseline laws that everybody kind of has to go by. But if there was like an outlaw kingdom, then obviously that would kind of throw things out the window. And then, I mean, if people want a PvP, for instance, and wanted to just do it all the time, that would probably be a place to go. Or if you want to be in constant warfare, because there's something that they call Dance of Dynasties in this game, where between political intrigue or subterfuge or pretty much anything like militaristic or anything like that, territory wars will happen, and betrayals will happen, treaties will happen. So if you had an entire kingdom that was dedicated to warfare, then basically you could have like Upper Bridge and Sunbridge could be in like a year-long war with everybody just constantly fighting. Like you wake up and you go on down, like let's say at this bridge right here, they've been trying to get across this bridge for quite some time. If it'll let me go past that, let's see. Yeah, there we go. So that bridge right there, they've been trying to establish a foothold on the other side of the bridge so they could start traveling into the other actual county to take it over. And this bridge is just giving them a terrible amount of time with like they're not able to get past it at all. But let's say somebody decides to bring siege engines and they finally make it over the bridge after like a month's time, and they get over to conquer the other county. Well, that now becomes that person who did that or who owns this county could essentially take over Sunbridge and become a double count, essentially. Even if they started from as a free-to-play player, it doesn't matter, because although it would take you a while and trying to get all that influence and things like that, and then getting to the point where you'd be able to own land and do it successfully, as a free-to-play player, it's not impossible. Definitely not. going to spoil which region is probably going to be OP. Then if it stays true to medieval, whichever region has access to iron deposits, clean water, and has natural terrain defenses will be top dog. Well, one thing that's cool is that the kingdom that I'm in, Ashland, they actually do, well, they are, as you can see, they're a very mountainous terrain place. But also, in terms of what would be more defensible though, I think at some point I would probably be more afraid of going through, like, let's say, a foresty area, because some of these areas have a lot of trees, for instance, and going through an area like that might not have a lot of visibility, might be a little bit more scarier than going through like a mountain, for instance. But the high terrain will definitely serve in terms of warfare. It definitely will. And in terms of where we'll be, because the settlements themselves, all over the map, you'll see places that have access to fresh water, coastal water. You know, if they're on the coast, of course, they'll have access to coastal water, but also mostly every village and, you know, place has a well that they start out with. But if they get access to, you know, like fresh water and things like that, that can then therein lead to fishing. Like for barn barrows, for instance, they could have, you know, like a lot of game, like a lot of stuff to hunt, a lot of foraging, a lot of, you know, fresh water and things like that. But I guess it just depends on, like, military wise, where exactly you are and what kind of stuff you have access to. Because like Toresk being, if they have wetlands regions, they might be able to do something in the water that would make them able to really defend themselves well, kind of thing. Who's my king? So me personally, I'm a part of the Kingdom of Ashland. So my king is King Sev. And I'm under, so how it works is monarchy wise, it goes, let's start from the baseline. So let's go regular person, mayor, baron, count, countess, duke, duchess, king, queen. So basically, for me, I'm under the king. Everybody who is in our region is under Sev. But then I'm also under the duke and the count, which are the same person as well, because sometimes the dukes themselves, depending on their packages and what they got originally, they might have, you know, like multiple counties and then also have a duchy of their own. So for me, my duke Negnar, he is both a duke and a count. So he essentially owns 3 counties, and he owns this entire duchy as well of Starmore, or will try to own this entire duchy. So essentially what will happen here is whenever when I pick my settlement, I'll only be able to choose one, essentially. But because I have a double package, a double mayor package, basically the package that myself and Demon have is worth $500 because we combined ours. On my side, when I choose the village, it'll have parcels of land added onto it, essentially. Natural terrain defense isn't about just mountains in medieval ages, you know. A swamp, for instance, is brutal to fight in. Right, exactly, because on top of that too, what'll happen there is that whenever like you go into a swamp, for instance, you won't be able to bring like a catapult through a swamp or things of that nature. Like, yeah, that's exactly a good point. He's a consort, by the way. He doesn't own the duke title. Oh, okay, I see. Okay, so we'll go by count then. So basically, for his county, I'll be in his county, and then I'll have my village in there. And then my task, or what I'm going for mainly, is I'm going for like resource production and also smithing. But also I'm going for whatever else we can get commerce-wise. So if in terms of like hunting game, and how the professions are going to work exactly is something I still need to figure out a little bit, or we need to find out more about. Because if there's like leather workers or things like that, woodcutters is going to be a little difficult because there's actually no trees in Harathi lands. Or if there are trees, they're like very sparse, more than likely, or very hard to find. So we won't have access to wood. So basically for us, we have to rely on stone, we have to rely on the ore, we have to rely on everything else, basically the game, the fresh water, the foraging, the fish, the farmland, and things of that nature. And we have to import wood from the south, essentially. So for our kingdom, let's see here, just to kind of show this. So let's say Stanwall has, not even Stanwall has wood. That's crazy. Holy crap. So we'll obviously have more stone. We'll obviously have more ore and things like that than other kingdoms. But like Elyria, we might have to import wood from there, or things of that nature. Now, some wood might be present somewhere. Where is it? Holy crap. It's hidden in there because I'm pretty sure we do have access to wood. It's just we gotta find out where it is. Oh, let me switch that one. But I think maybe Warslope might have something, possibly. Really? Wow, that's crazy. Like no trees at all. When a new player joins the game, do they pick whatever town they want to start in? Yeah, a new player, they basically have the sky's the limit for them, so they can basically choose wherever they want to go. In terms of what race they want to play and things like that, they have multiple choices as well, because people that own land, depending on where that land is, they might only have one or a few choices, as opposed, like for us, for instance, I might only be able to be a Harathi, or might only be able to be either Harathi or Broodveer. Probably won't be able to be a Naran, but someone who's a fresh player could probably be all three, or one of those three, if they decide to live in this region. Or if they wanted to, essentially, if you wanted to, let's say, start as, let's go over here, Aranor. You wanted to start as like a Weird or a Kipik. Probably not a Weird. I don't see a Weird being able to leave, because Weird are like the We Are the World guys that like to share everything, so I doubt they'd let you leave, but easily. But let's say you're a Kipik and you want to travel into Harathi lands, although you'd be hated because you're smaller than them and they'd imagine you like World of Warcraft gnomes, you could do that, essentially. Alpine trees does have trees. They will be sparse, not really listed on the map. Alpine tundra. Okay, that's why. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense then. So that's why it says the wood is present, but it won't. Gotcha. Okay. And I'm sure that like on the border here and things of that nature, people that are near the border will probably be able to still harvest the wood. There still seems to be some wood like on this side of the border a little bit. There's one right there. That one right there. Just be a leather worker, Sir Medieval. The region has lots of game after all. I wanna do most of everything in my village. But for me personally, I know my calling is definitely smithing. I want to make weapons and armor and things of that nature, but I also want to provide a place that people can go to, or people can live, that will be able to do things like that. They won't be able to do wood cutting, or a lot of it though. But I feel like with these mountainous areas, I think that game will probably be something they'll definitely be able to do. And of course, stone mining and, mining in general for the resources. And we will get access to a lot of fish as well over here too, because of these rivers that run through the settlements and things of that nature, and the lakes that we'll have access to, and the actual ocean itself. But one thing that's really cool too is that something you don't notice at first glance with the game, whenever you're looking at this map, they went ahead and they stated in the dev blog, or the stream as well, that depending on what border, like if you have a river and you're wondering how deep it is, if it has a border that's like pretty thick that you can clearly see, that might be a really, really deep one. But if you have one like this one, for instance, that doesn't really have a border that you can clearly see at all, it might be just like a really shallow pond or something like that you might only be able to sail a barge through, or like hold a barge or sit a barge on, basically. This isn't a class-based game, but a skill talent-based one. Right, yeah, it's not really like a class-based one, but the job system does allow you to kind of be things like different things. Like if you wanted to be a priest that blesses people or things of that nature, you can. Or like a monk, for instance, like you can see that one there, or like a full-on warrior, of course. And there's also jobs for people that want to be more subterfuge-based. Like for instance, if I can find it, I know where to find it. It's always the forts. Yeah. So you could have like an officer if you want to be like a leader of people. If you want to command troops, basically, you can do that. Interpreter, things of that nature too. But in terms of the fort itself, you would have jobs like a diplomat, interpreter, a fool. That's funny. Or artist. Actually, where was it? There are also spies, like dungeoneers, like I told you about too. There are also spies. Where are they? Let me see. Actually, I'm pretty sure there's one in Greenreach, but I can't remember. Do you need to be notified by a messenger of an event to hear battles or news? Yeah, essentially, yeah. You won't see like, worldwide server messages like going throughout everybody's global, basically. That kind of thing, yeah, you'll definitely have to be notified. And then in terms of the maps themselves, when we get in game, we'll be shaping the maps, and the maps will be growing and expanding on their own. So cartographers will actually be a thing. and they'll have to draw up new maps. If you want to have an up-to-date map, if something's changed territory-wise or something like that, a cartographer would have to do something like that. And there's even people that want to come into the game that want to just actually, well, I mean, if people make videos about it, we'll know it regardless. But there's people that want to come in that actually want to like visit battles and things like that and be bards. Like they want to go to taverns and be able to like uplift spirits and tell stories and things of that nature. That could be a spy. Yeah, you could be a spy. Actually, let me see. Where the hell is this thing? Like librarian? One of these has a spy. I know it does. Guard, miner. That was the only one I've seen so far, because a lot of these have different jobs. Let me go to another region, actually. Bet it'll be easier to find one over here. Soldier, builder, woodworker. Oh, spy. There we go. So that's one of the most notable ones over here in Beckshore, too. Yeah, that's one there. So you could essentially... Let's see where we'd find one. Yeah. So in Greenvine Heights, the most notable one is a spy. That's the most notable profession there. So you might find quite a few around. And in terms of learning from these spies and things like that, like most notable here, yeah. You could become like a master spy if you wanted to be something like that. You could be like anything you want it to be, really, that the game allows you to do, which it seems to allow you to do quite a bit overall. Is it in the form of human, or are they going, if they are going realistic? So in terms of the actual character creation itself, there's different races. So there's the Harathi, the Broodveer, the Dross, the Genoa. So they actually don't go, they go more fantasy based when it comes to these. The Broodveer are like these like kind of like Norsemen, basically. The Weird would be like the we are the world kind of guys that want to share everything. The Torresk would be like the wetlands people kind of thing. The Midari, like we were saying, like you guys were saying earlier, would be like the ocean tribe, basically. Jobs are based on the zone you're in. No, you can become like a job, any job that you want to be. You could do it in a region. Like let's say, holy crap, the Yoru are huge. Whoa, I didn't see that before. Dang. But no, if you wanted to be like a spy in the Harathi lands or anything like that, you totally could. And even if it was a case where, like, let's say if you wanted to go down to the south, like let's say you went on a trip down to Stanwall. Let's say Stanwall has some really good spies, or what the hell? Where are the spies at? Actually, we don't have a lot of spies in our area, do we? Holy crap. But you could essentially, go cross country, and you have way more freedom as a free-to-play player. Or just like as a free player, or like anybody who doesn't have land is basically free to do whatever they want, within the laws of the region. Or if it's like a lawless town, then go crazy. But essentially, if you wanted to go down to like Vexshore and learn from the most notable spies, and then, or even go to Green Heights, that's closer, and then come back up once you feel like you've mastered it enough to be a spy for them, and you can even like get to the point where you might be able to teach people and things like that. You could totally do stuff like that. They all look human, just different disguises and skin tones. Yeah, I guess that's a way to put it too. Like it's more like yeah, pretty much different skin tones, definitely. Dross, kind of different body structures too. Like some of them might look a little bit skinnier than others and things like that. And you'll also be able to customize that in the game as well. But they'll each have their different abilities and like cultural looks of their actual biomes, or not biomes, but their actual locations. Like the Torresk, I really love the way that their stuff looks, but essentially once we get, and their armor is going to look different too. Like all that stuff, their villages, their homes, things of that nature, it'll all look different basically. Even the resources that you find in the region, like even metal, like you won't find, for instance, iron everywhere. You won't find, pigs and deers everywhere either. Where is it actually? This showcases like some of what, Torresk. Oh, this is like Torresk architecture. I don't even know how to say that. Architecture. There we go. Yeah, that kind of showcases how the Torresk buildings would look. And those are going to be vastly different from like the Harathi ones. For instance, like Harathi is going to be mainly subterranean, so we might be underground most of our time, and our buildings are going to look a lot different. And we might be more stone-based than most people. Because one of the ones that I'm kind of interested in checking out too for the settlements is actually one that actually does have a lot of stone too. So I'm interested in trying that out for sure too. But overall, at this point, we're just kind of waiting to see what happens with the rest of it. We're waiting on a date for the domain selection. It is cool to see though that that we actually do have a place that we can kind of go to and, you know, theorize and look at and talk about all the possibilities and things like that that might happen in the game. Because if they're able to efficiently, like from day one, even put everything into place and have it work well, because server wise this would be nuts to think about too, for sure. But without terraforming, because terraforming tends to make things a little bit difficult, very, very difficult when it comes to just about any kind of game trying it. Like Life is Feudal, for instance, when they first started, they were super laggy with all that terraforming going on. And then we had the MMO, which was able to do it on the massive scale, you know, with the map that was able, I think they wanted to have 100,000 players in the map, I think, but they had a couple thousand or so. And servers, like the way that they did it, because the servers went in grid patterns, that's kind of, I think, something that might pop up in the future as well, or like at least some form of it. Because like an Atlas, for instance, even though it was, you know, it turned out how it did, they implemented the grid system too, so that, you know, server wise, if let's say one grid in the southeast goes down, that might not affect one in the northwest, and people in the northwest might still be able to play, kind of thing. So I feel like in the future, server wise, that might be one thing that they try for that kind of thing. But I don't think it would be something where it's like limited population like those games would be, because that just wouldn't make sense at that point, because there'd be literally hundreds and hundreds of people in these towns for sure, and people coming in and out all the time. Have a good night, Philosophy. But yeah, essentially that was definitely what I wanted to talk about when it came to Chronicles of Elyria. We've got a lot of news now about it overall. Have a good night. I'll be behind you in a little while. I gotta go get some sleep later tonight too. So I can make a character, start in that Beck's place, learn everything I can for a spy, and just journey to your village and be a spy for you? Yep, exactly. You could. Or if like people, you know, wanted to get sponsored and had the ability to come up to our region and learn from the best blacksmiths, learn from the best miners, and then come back down to their regions, they could do that too. Oh yeah. That's like with Demon, for instance, he wants to be someone who goes, you know, like hunting, or like a kind of like a spy character, kind of someone who can wander and explore. So anytime that he wants to come back, or if, like whatever he, you know, learns out in the world, or whatever he gains out in the world, he could come back to the town anytime he wants and sell it, or anything like that. When did they release this website with maps? Weren't those NDA? They were, until they released them officially. They released them about 2 nights ago, and at first they actually had a special event live stream, but then they ended up actually releasing the maps themselves. So now everything is completely under NDA, or not under NDA, it's completely lifted from the NDA, and now we can actually talk about it and showcase it now. The maps that they had beforehand though, those were actually just like the baseline ones that didn't show all these details that we have now. But now we can actually like take a look at this stuff and see what kind of resources would be where, what kind of professions we'll be able to expect, things like that. Same thing with like the rangers as well, because Aranor seems like it's got a lot of wood. So if somebody wanted to become like a master woodcutter here, and I don't even know why you want to come over to us to be like a master woodcutter. I guess maybe if they allow you to plant trees, which these trees, the resources are finite too. So in terms of the resources, they're expected to last 10 real years. So they want to put enough resources in the game to last that amount of time. So, or longer rather too. Will you be able to stream the alpha? We don't know yet if that'll be under NDA or not. I'm hoping not, because even from the pre-alpha footage that we've seen from the pre-Illyria client, well, I know it won't be like a lot of stuff in the game at that time, but like as time goes on and seeing it kind of build up would be nice. I think at least at Alpha 2, hopefully we'll have that NDA lifted for sure, no matter what. But there is a testing phase going on right now, though. People are able to try. We haven't seen anything or heard about it just yet, except that from some people that have tried it, they tend to enjoy the combat that they've seen so far. But I would say that since the resources also are finite, so in terms of like a mine, once we mine out a specific cave, for instance, that cave is basically, you got to find another use for that cave. The ore is no longer there essentially, unless you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the cave, and then in that case, then the ore would start to, you know, kind of pop up a bit, because you go down to like lower levels of what that resource has. And then for trees, if you're able to plant those, then you'd be able to essentially probably turn like a non-tree like area into like infested with trees, I bet. Because this is like this map that they're showing us is like the baseline, but like let's give it a year past release. This map could look completely different than what it looks now. Is there a date for alpha yet? Nope, there's a testing phase going on right now, but that's only for pre-alpha exclusive access members right now. No date for the actual alpha just yet, but I'm excited about it. Hopefully we get something like that later on this year for sure. Because we've actually got first they have to do the domain and settlement selection. So once that happens, kings have already, everybody's already chosen the kingdoms. So we know which kingdoms will be a part of. So now the dukes got to go in and pick their duchies, and then the counts got to go in and pick their counties, and then after that, that's when we come in as mayors and barons, and then we pick the rest. So we pick the settlements that we're going to be in and things of that nature. And then also for free-to-play players, there will be, from what I heard, I don't know if they'll still be doing this, but originally when the domain and settlement selection was going, the land that was left, they did actually say that they might be selling that to players, even if you didn't have a package at all, or it might have been Bloodline and above or around there. But I remember that they were going to be doing something like that, though, just in case, though. Because once they probably want to fill up all these spots, even if they don't have a lot of players in them, they will have NPCs. So like this village, for instance, having like 71 to 96 NPCs walking around the settlement, that's still going to feel like a very, very living and breathing world. That'll be awesome for sure. Oh, let me check something really quick too here. Okay. Oh yeah, we're right on time. But overall, though, that's pretty much the whole gist of Chronicles of Elyria. There's so much that goes into this game. It's a pretty complex beast to kind of tackle, but it's really, really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing more about what they bring out in the future. But the contract system, things like that, that's something that they absolutely want to have in the game. So if you want to be able to form contracts with NPCs or players, like you give me this, I'll pay you that, or you go gather this, or you'll give me this land kind of thing, you absolutely can do that too. And if you guys are interested, there's also always stuff going on the forums to read about, and not much in terms of like actual news about the pre-alpha and things like that. We got to wait on that, but I would imagine over the next couple of months we might be finding out more about that. Right now I wouldn't get too excited because we'll still be a little bit of a wait, but I know almighty Timo, man, seeing these maps now, it feels so good. Like you can just imagine yourself inside of these maps and just actually seeing the roads and things like that and the bridges. You can feel yourself kind of traveling throughout them, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. I really am, because there's so much detail into this. It looks insane. This is like a late 2020 release, but I would say the actual alpha itself should probably take place. Well, the alpha one I'm definitely placing before quarter two, right around like quarter one, I would imagine, of 2020. It was supposed to be where this year alpha 1 started, but now it's going to be a little bit different. But since the pre-alpha testing phase is already going on, I would imagine they only need a couple months for that, and then alpha might take off. But that depends on how far along they are though right now. But they're doing a lot of extensive testing right now. They got a lot of people that have access to that pre-alpha client too, quite a few. So it's probably pretty interesting what's going on in there right now. But we'll have to see what happens though over time. Even in the alphas and betas and stuff like that, building the world and stuff like that, it's going to be persistent, because us choosing our world or choosing our settlements, and once we get into actually like play with the stuff and things like that, we're starting already from that point to build the world and build our settlements and things of that nature. So that's basically when our gameplay begins, as far as I see it. Even if it's alpha 2, I'm gonna think to myself, well, I'm gonna just like cut out 4 or 6 hours of my day and just Chronicles of Elyria, basically. Same thing for Bannerlord, at least 4 hours of my day for that one. Hell yes. Oh yeah. And the cool thing is if you own territory and things like that, it's not something where you have to be on like all day, all night. For the most part, like people who want to succeed probably need to be on. If you're like a duke, I would say probably like at least 6 to 8 hours a day or so, or like 6 to 8 hours, like every 1 to 2 days or so, because Duke that doesn't, you know, or like King, for instance, if you just log in once a month kind of thing, then there's a lot of stuff to take care of. Orly, oh no, I'm sorry, crap. Don't worry about that though, because there's more to talk about as time goes on. This is just the first like research podcast and like discussion podcast that I wanted to have about the game, because I love the look of this map itself, and I'm definitely looking forward to finding out more about how the professions are going to work now with the new systems in place and things of that nature. And I want to find out what's going on in that pre-alpha test, because I'm just losing it over here. God. But anyway, folks, we are actually at the end of our time. Damn it, no. But don't worry about that, because we'll have more coming soon for sure. I'm definitely going to be taking I've got a bunch of notes down for the map itself that I took over the course of watching the video or the stream that they had for the special event. But I have access to Alpha 2 for the testing phase. I'm Alpha 2 beta tester. So I'll be in that one for sure. And I don't know if they let people into Alpha 1. We'll have to see what happens there, because, you know, they did actually have Alpha and Beta access in here at one point. They still had the Beta. Well, this stuff's gone now, but they actually had Alpha 1 access, I think, at 1.2. So if they do let people in at some point there, then I'm definitely going to jump in there no matter what. Ready for Classic next week? Yes, I am. I'm going to go Shadow Priest, and I'm going to try to carve out as much of my day as possible. Hopefully. Hope you can stream it. Yeah, I'm hoping so, that they let us. I don't honestly expect it to be something that's going to be crazy, you know, crazy good in the first parts of it, or like have a lot of. I feel like it will be good, but like have a, you know, like the crazy amount of, you know, stuff to do right off the bat and things like that, especially in the alphas. I feel like we'll be testing out things like the crafting, the creature hunting, and things of that nature. But as time goes on and they start building more and more on it, I got a really good feeling about what it's gonna turn into for sure. Stag lag. Oh man, I'm in white main. Crap. Dang it. Well, don't worry, because you know what? No matter what, we're all still playing World of Warcraft Classic, and that's all that matters for sure. But anyway, folks, that's gonna be all for tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I gotta get going for sure. It has been a wonderful night, but hopefully they start releasing some more news and we start finding out more and more about the game as time goes on, and more about that pre-alpha testing phase especially. You guys have a wonderful night or day. I'll see you next time. Later, folks.